Okay, can you hear me, everyone? Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, miss, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, is my screen shared? Can you see the screen?
Yes.
What's this? What's going on here? Someone, can you please mute? Because someone has something open. 1 minute. Okay, I hope everyone is muting their sounds and you can hear me. I'm going to share my screen and I will start immediately. Today we have two plans in mind. I want to start the lesson, Transport in Mammals, and I want to solve the second half of paper 2. We solved the first half of paper 2 in class until page 30 or 35. I told you to finish this for homework. And if you have any questions, ask me. So today we will introduce transport in animals, and we will also hopefully solve paper 2 plans starting from page 35 till the end of paper 2. Okay, now transport in animals. This is a continuation of human biology. Transport in animals is another name for the cardiovascular system or the circulatory system. We will start by defining it. Today, we will take the core. We will start by defining the circulatory system. It is a system like any other system that is made up of a group of organs that work together. Now, there is a particular definition in your syllabus which says that the circulatory system is a system of blood vessels with a pump and valves to ensure one-way flow of blood. So this is the definition provided in your syllabus that we have to adopt and we cannot play around with. Now, let's break it down. It's a system of blood vessels. The blood vessels in your circulatory system, I hope that you know what they are. They include your arteries and what who will tell me? The biggest blood vessels are the arteries, followed by, yes, capillaries are also included, followed by veins and capillaries, of course. Okay, someone's voice is not very clear. Yes, and the heart. Excellent. Now, it's a system of blood vessels. We mentioned the 3 blood vessels that we will study in detail with a pump. This pump here is referring to the heart because the heart is the pumping organ that pumps the blood to different parts of the body. And valves, we will study the internal structure of the heart and we will know that we have valves inside the heart and we have valves in veins that make sure that the blood flows in the correct direction to ensure one-way flow of blood. So this is the definition in your syllabus that we will not improvise. We will just have to adopt as it is. The circulatory system or the cardiovascular system is a system of blood vessels, those 3 blood vessels that we will study with a pump. The pump here is the heart. And valves, we will study what the valves are in detail in case you still don't know what valves are to ensure one-way flow of blood. Now, this circulatory system is made up of the heart. This is an organ. The blood vessels are organs also. In other words, arteries, veins, and capillaries, each one of them is a separate organ. They are not tissues, they are organs. It is blood that is a tissue. So blood that flows inside the blood vessels, it's a tissue. And the blood vessels are organs, and the heart, of course, is an organ. Now, the location of the heart and the function of the heart, this is so easy. The heart is located within your rib cage. And why within your rib cage? Because the heart is found inside the rib cage for protection. And also in the rib cage, there is a central bone. It's called the chest bone, or it has another name. It's called the sternum. The heart is found behind this chest bone, behind the sternum. And of course, the heart is enclosed inside the rib cage for protection. And in case you did not know, your heart is tilted a little bit to the left side of the body. Okay, so this is the heart function and location. This is so easy. Now, this is the most important picture in the whole lesson, the internal anatomy of the heart. We want to first know how to draw it and know how to label it and know the flow of blood inside the heart. So let's do it together. I highly advise you to get a piece of paper and draw with it, because this is what you will do when you come to study. What are we studying now? The internal heart anatomy. In other words, excuse me, I will have to turn my laptop so it doesn't tear in. Okay, the internal heart anatomy. So what are we going to do? We are going to look inside the heart. Okay, I hope this is better. We are going to look inside the heart. When you come to study this part of the lesson, you will draw the heart. And I hope you're doing that with me. And then you will divide the heart into 4 divisions. Every division is called a chamber. And the second thing you will do is that you will divide the heart into the left side and the right side. Now, how do you identify the left and the right sides of the heart? Now, if you look at the heart, if the heart is in front of you, like it is at the moment, this is your right hand. Are you all with me? This is your right hand, yes? Then we will crisscross. If this is your right hand is here, then that side of the heart will be the left side of the heart. Okay? And the other side of the heart then will be the right side of the heart. So this is called the crisscross method. This is the heart. You are facing your heart. I want to identify the left side and the right side. The left and the right sides of the heart will be the opposite to your hands. This will be your right hand here. Yes, are you all with me? If this is your right hand, then this will be the left side of the heart. And if this is your left hand, then this will be the right side of the heart. I'm going to erase that so it does not confuse you. For an easier method, you will draw the heart and you will be facing the heart, and then you will give the heart your back. And then you will not need to do any crisscrossing. The left side of the heart will be the left hand and the right side of the heart will be the right hand. Okay, are you with me? Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to draw the heart. I'll divide it into 4 divisions, and every division is called a chamber. And then the second thing I will do, I will identify the left side of the heart and I will identify the right side of the heart. This is called the crisscross method. If you are facing the heart, your right hand will be the left side of the heart and your left hand will be the right side of the heart. I hope this is clear, because if you do mistakes now, everything will be incorrect from there. And then you will label. Now, those who took the heart last year, I want you to help me label. The upper chamber, what is it called?
Atrium.
The atrium. Now, this is the left side of the heart. So this is the left atrium or the right atrium?
Left atrium.
Very good. So this is the left atrium. And then the chamber below it, this chamber, what is it called?
Ventricle.
Very good. The left ventricle. Now here I'm on the right side of the heart, and this is the upper chamber. So this is going to be the right
Atrium.
the right atrium, and the lower chamber will be the right
Ventricle.
ventricle. Very good. So I labeled the different chambers of the heart. Now, between those chambers, we have valves. I'm going to draw them like this. These valves, they are like doors, and their function is to prevent, what is their function? The backflow,
Backflow of blood.
black flow of blood. They make sure that the blood is traveling in the correct direction. Now, the ventricles that are found between the atria and the valves, I mean, that are found between the atria and the ventricles, together, they're called the atrioventricular valves. Now, please say that with me, because the names of those valves are important for year 10. We have two types of valves in the heart. We have valves between the atrium and the ventricles. They're called the atrioventricular valves. And we have another set of valves below the arteries that we will discuss in a minute. Now, the valve that is found on the left side of the heart, what is its name? Who remembers?
Bicuspid, I think it's bicuspid
Yes,
valve.
you are correct. It's called the bicuspid or the mitral valve. And the valve that is found on the right side of the heart between the right atrium and the right ventricle is called the, who remembers?
Tricuspid.
Yes, it's called the tricuspid valve. So again, I will repeat all that, especially for the new students who are hearing this for the first time. We are studying the internal heart anatomy. I'm going to draw the heart, the normal heart that I usually draw. I will divide it into 4 divisions. Every division is called a chamber. I have 2 upper chambers known as the atria. So this is an atrium. And this is another atrium. And I have 2 lower chambers called the ventricles. So this is a ventricle, and this is another ventricle. Now, I'm going to divide the heart into the right and the left sides. This will be the left side of the heart. It's opposite to the direction of my hand. So this is my right hand, then that will be the left side of the heart. And the opposite side will be the right side of the heart, because this will help me label. This will therefore be the left atrium and the left ventricle and the right atrium and the right ventricle. I hope it's clear. I'll make a third picture again for the third time. I'm going to draw a big heart. I'm going to divide it into 4 chambers. And then I will label the atria and the ventricles. Left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium, right ventricle, because this is the left side of the heart and this is the right side of the heart. Any questions up till now? Inside the heart, I have doors. I have valves. These valves, they control the direction of the flow of the blood. I have 2 valves here below between the atria and the ventricles called the atrial. They're called the atrial what? Ventricular valves. Why are they called atrioventricular? They are divided into 2 words, atrioventricular, because they are found in between the atrium and the ventricles. That's why they're called atrioventricular valves. Now, these atrioventricular valves are divided into 2. The one on the left side of the heart and the one on the right side of the heart. Like your friend said, the atrioventricular valve on the left side of the heart, this one, has 2 names. It's known as the mitral valve or the what? Or the, wake up with me, bicuspid valve. And the atrioventricular valve on the right side of the heart here, between the right atrium and the right ventricle, is known as the tricuspid what valve? Anyone has any questions? Anyone wants me to repeat anything? Okay.
In
I did.
in the right
Huh?
side of the right side,
Yes, what's wrong with it?
the valve the valves has only the valves has only one name, which is the tricuspid.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, see, this is a nicer picture here. And this picture is showing you the valves. You have the tricuspid valve in the right side of the heart between the right atrium and the right ventricle. And here I have the mitral valve in the left side of the heart between the left atrium and the left ventricle. This is called the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve. Okay, I have two other valves that I will mention in a minute. Okay, going back to the drawing that I am going to use while I'm studying. I said I will draw the heart. This is the fourth time I do it. I will divide it into 4 chambers. I will identify the left side of the heart and the right side of the heart. I will identify the left atrium, the left ventricle, the right atrium, and the right ventricle. I will use a different color. And then I'm going to point out the atrioventricular valve. The atrioventricular valves, there are 2 between the atria and the ventricles. The one on the left side of the heart is known as the mitral or the bicuspid valves. And the one on the right side of the heart, yes, it only has one name, which is the tricuspid valve. Okay, now I'm going to draw the lungs here above the heart. And I'm going to draw the body below the heart because the heart is located in between the lungs and the body. And this is very important to understand the flow of blood inside the heart. Now, let us start between the flow of blood between the lungs and the heart. Now, tell me, the blood coming out of the lungs, what do you think? It will be oxygenated or deoxygenated? In other
Oxygenated.
words, yes, in case you're confused what oxygenated means. This is your nose, okay? And this is your mouth. Air will enter through your nose, and then directly from the nose, it will go to your respiratory system. It will go to the lungs. And in the lungs, we will take the oxygen from the air that you breathed in, and this oxygen will combine with the hemoglobin inside your red blood cells to give me oxyhemoglobin. We will take this in the lesson respiration, so it is also requested to be known by you. So again, logically speaking, this is your nose. Air will enter into your nose. And then from the nose, it will be taken directly to the lungs. At the lungs, what does the lung do? The lung will take the oxygen in the air and combine it with the hemoglobin protein inside red blood cells to give me oxyhemoglobin. In other words, this oxyhemoglobin is the oxygenated blood. I hope you are all with me. This oxygenated blood is the good blood. This is the blood that we want to be pumped to the whole body. Who will pump this oxygenated blood? What is the pumping organ in our body?
The heart.
The heart, very good. So let's go back to the beginning of the journey. We have air. We will breathe this air through our nose, and then this air will go directly to our lungs. What does the lung do? The lung takes the oxygen in the air, combines it with hemoglobin inside red blood cells to give me oxyhemoglobin or oxygenated blood. This oxygenated blood will go to the heart first before the heart pumps it to the whole body. Okay, this is the easiest way to study the flow of blood inside the heart. Now let's look at the direction of blood flow. So we said that we will write the term lungs above the heart and body below the heart, because the blood coming out of the lungs is oxygenated blood. In other words, blood that is filled with oxygen, oxyhemoglobin. Okay, pay attention to those terms. Now, this oxyhemoglobin or this oxygenated blood will enter the heart through a vein known as the pulmonary vein. This is the pulmonary vein. Let me change color. It will enter through the pulmonary vein. Okay. Now, why is it called pulmonary vein? I will tell you why. Because the term pulmonary in biology means what? Means which organ in your body? Means lungs. Yes. Okay. So pulmonary means lungs. Vein is a blood vessel that carries blood towards the heart. So again, this oxygenated blood will come from your lungs and it will enter the heart through the pulmonary vein, through a blood vessel known as the pulmonary vein. Why is it called the pulmonary vein? Because pulmonary means it is coming from the lungs. Vein mean it is moving towards the heart. Now let's look at the picture. This oxygenated blood will come from the lungs and it will go to the heart through the pulmonary vein and it will enter the first chamber, which is the right. What's this chamber?
Atrium.
Excellent. The heart will pump. Now this pumping will force the blood to move from the right atrium into the, what is this chamber?
Right ventricle.
Excellent. The right ventricle. It will move through this oxygenated blood, okay? It will move through an open valve. What is this valve? Hmm?
Tricuspid
Yes.
valve.
Yes,
بس مش المفروض دي مش المفروض دي left ventricle و left atrium.
ايوه صح. الشطارة دي. Yes, good, you're awake. The left atrium and the left ventricle, and it will go through an open valve known as the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve. Very good. Now this oxygenated blood is in the left ventricle. This heart is going to pump. This oxygenated blood in the left ventricle will then enter into the biggest artery of the body known as the what?
Aorta.
Aorta. Okay? And from the aorta, this oxygenated blood is going to be distributed to the whole body. Now, I want to stop here. Now, below the aorta, there is another valve that we did not mention. This valve, its name is very easy because its name takes after the name of the blood vessel or the aorta. That valve below the aorta is known as the aortic valve. Let's follow with the journey. So again, from the very beginning, this is the easiest way to study the blood flow. And the blood flow is both core and supplement. I am going to draw my heart. I'm going to divide it into 4 chambers and then identify the left side of the heart and the right side of the heart. Don't get confused between the left and the right side. See, if you do, like I just did a minute ago, you will get all the labels wrong. So this is the left atrium and the left ventricle, the right atrium and the right ventricle. I have 2 valves between the atria and the ventricles called the atrioventricular valves. I am mentioning the name more than once because this name is new to you. This is supplement. Okay, you have 2 atrioventricular valves, one on the left and one on the right. Atrioventricular valves, these are valves that are present between the atria and the ventricles. The one on the left side is known as the mitral or the bicuspid. And the one on the right is known as the tricuspid. I repeated this at least 5 times until now. The lung is situated above the heart and the body is situated below the heart. This is the journey. Air is going to enter through your nose or mouth and then will go directly to the lung. The lung will take the oxygen. It will give this oxygen to the hemoglobin in the red blood cells to give me a molecule known as oxyhemoglobin. Again, this is supplement. Oxyhemoglobin means the blood is oxygenated or deoxygenated?
Oxygenated.
Very good, oxygenated blood. This oxygenated blood needs to be pumped to the whole body. Who will pump it? The what?
Heart.
The heart. So it will arrive from the lungs and it will enter the left atrium. It will arrive from the lungs and enter the left atrium through the pulmonary. What's the name of the blood vessel
Vein.
that will? Very good, pulmonary vein. And everything has a name for a reason. It's called pulmonary because it's coming from the lungs. It's called vein because it's moving towards the heart. And then the blood will be here in the left atrium. The heart will pump. This oxygenated blood will move through the open mitral valve into the left ventricle. The ventricles will pump. This blood will move from the left ventricle to the aorta that will send this oxygenated blood to the whole body. There is a valve just below the aorta that has a very easy name. It's called the aortic valve. And this is the flow of blood in the left side of the heart. The left side of the heart always holds oxygenated blood. That is why the left side of the heart in biology books is always colored in red, because red blood is blood that is rich in hemoglobin and rich in oxygen. So we are complete and we're done with the flow of blood on the left side of the heart. You study the flow of blood and the anatomy together because they relate to each other. Who has any questions about the flow of blood in the left side of the heart? Okay, as long as I did not receive any questions, so I assume that you understand. Now, when this oxygenated blood or the oxyhemoglobin is taken up by the body cells, what does the body cells do with the oxygen in the oxygenated blood? This oxygen is needed in what? Very good. It is needed in respiration. And the body cells will take the oxygen in respiration and give what as a waste product?
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide.
Very good. Blood that is rich in carbon dioxide. Now, blood that is rich in carbon dioxide, what do you think it is called? Oxygenated blood or deoxygenated blood?
Deoxygenated.
Deoxygenated blood.
Very good. Deoxygenated blood, or in other words, blood that is rich in carbon dioxide and poor in oxygen. Now, this deoxygenated blood will arrive from the body and it will enter the right side of the heart through two big veins, through a superior vena cava and an inferior vena cava. Now, who remembers why there is a superior and an inferior vena cava? The superior vena cava receives deoxygenated blood from which parts of the body?
Upper part.
From the brain.
Very good. From the superior or the upper parts of the body. From the brain, from the chest, from the arms. So this deoxygenated blood will arrive from the upper parts of the body or the superior parts of the body, and it will enter the right side of the heart through the superior vena cava. And the inferior vena cava, what do you think? It will carry deoxygenated blood from which parts of the body? From the upper or the lower? From the lower parts of the body, from the legs and the genitals and the lower part of the body. So this deoxygenated blood, okay, will arrive from the lower parts of the body, and they will both meet and enter into the right atrium. The right atrium will contract, and this deoxygenated blood will move from the right atrium through the open tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. The right ventricle will contract, and this deoxygenated blood will enter the pulmonary artery. Now, I want you to guess with me why this is called the pulmonary artery. This pulmonary artery, from the name, where is it going?
The lungs.
Very good. It's going to the lungs. And why is it called an artery, not a vein?
Because
Taking
the
blood
passage is
out of
away
the-
from the heart.
Exactly, because the blood here is moving away from the heart towards the pulmonary, towards the lungs. Now, there's another valve that is found below the pulmonary artery called the pulmonary valve. Very good. Now, the last thing I will mention before I go back to the internal heart anatomy, this is actually half the lesson. The other set of valves that you should know their name for year 10, the semi-lunar valves. These semilunar valves are the two valves that are found in the heart that are found below the arteries. Below the aorta, it's called the aortic valve, and below the pulmonary artery, and it is known as the pulmonary valve. Okay, and for your information, the aorta and the pulmonary artery are the only two arteries in the whole body that have valves. Any other artery in the rest of the body has no valves. We'll go back to it when we study the different blood vessels. So we are talking in specific about the valves found inside the heart, because this part is supplement. Again, in case you forgot, always draw the heart in front of you while you're studying, because this will help so much in the studying of the anatomy and the flow of the blood. I'm going to draw my heart. I'll divide it into 4 chambers, again for the 10th time. The left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium, right ventricle. It's very important to label properly the different sides. I have 2 valves here. These 2 valves that are found between the atria and the ventricles, they have a name. They're called the atrioventricular valves that are of 2 types, one on the left and one on the right. The one on the left is the mitral or the bicuspid. And this is the one on the left, okay? And the one on the right is the
Tricuspid.
tricuspid. I said it so many times in those 10 minutes. Now I have 2 other valves, another set of valves below the arteries, one below the aorta and one below the pulmonary artery. What is the name of the valve below the aorta?
Aortic
Aortic
valve.
valve.
Aortic valve. And the one below the pulmonary artery is the
Pulmonary valve.
pulmonary valve. Now, these 2 valves that are below the arteries are called the semi-lunar valves. So this can be a nice essay question in paper 4. What are the 2 sets of valves in the heart? They want those 2 keywords, atrioventricular and semi-lunar. And of course, this is not enough. You will say atrioventricular are the valves between the atria and the ventricles. The one on the left is the bicuspid or the mitral, and the one on the right is the tricuspid. And the semi-lunar, these are the valves below the arteries, one below the aorta known as the aortic valve, and one below the artery known as the pulmonary valve. Okay? You don't have to know why they are called these names, but to make it easy to study, semi-lunar valves in biology, they're called semi-lunar because lunar means circle and semi means half circle. These valves, they look like a circle and they will prevent the backflow of blood. When the blood is moving in one direction, these valves, they open. And when the blood is moving in the opposite direction, these valves, they create something called like a pocket that will prevent the backflow of blood. I'll show you a picture in a minute that will clarify what I am talking about. Okay, so we are done with the internal heart anatomy. And again, that part, you will never be able to study it. Don't memorize a mental image of the heart. Draw it with a pencil while you're studying so that you understand the anatomy and the flow. So if I have a picture like this in front of me, I'm going to always write lungs up here, body down there, so that I know the journey of the oxygen. The air is going to be inhaled by your nose and it will go directly to the lungs. The lungs, its function is to take the oxygen from the air and combine it with hemoglobin to give me a molecule. What's the name of this molecule?
Oxyhemoglobin.
Exactly, oxyhemoglobin. Now, this is the blood, the oxygenated, that I want pumped to the whole body. Who will pump it? The heart. It will go to the heart first so that it can be pumped. It will enter the heart from the pulmonary artery. See here, the pulmonary vein. You have 2 pulmonary veins in case you're asked, because one vein comes from one lung. You have the right pulmonary vein and the left pulmonary vein here. Okay, these pulmonary veins will take the oxygenated blood from the lungs to enter the left atrium. And then contraction will happen. This is going to cause the mitral valve to open. This oxygenated blood will enter the left ventricle. The heart will contract again. And then the oxygenated blood will move from the left ventricle through the open aortic valve to enter the aorta. And the aorta will take this oxygenated blood to the whole body. The body takes the oxygen and give out CO2 as a waste product. So the blood coming out of the body is deoxygenated blood. This deoxygenated blood will go back to the right side of the heart. From the upper parts of the body, it will enter through the superior vena cava. From the lower parts of the body, it will enter through the inferior vena cava, right into the right atrium, and then through the right ventricle, through the open tricuspid valve. When the right ventricle contracts, this deoxygenated blood will enter the pulmonary artery through the open pulmonary valve to go back to the heart to become oxygenated, to release the CO2, for the CO2 to be exhaled. Now here we said a big story. How will I even memorize all this story and all the anatomy? I will not be able to memorize this story or the flow of blood except when I have the picture of the heart in front of me, because this can be an essay question in paper 4. Discuss the flow of blood inside the heart. Finished. 4 marks. So we want to write every detail without missing any word. Now, in order to answer this question, divide the flow of blood inside the heart into 2 parts. I can start by answering this question by mentioning the left side of the heart. I will discuss the flow of blood in the left side of the heart, and then I will finish. And then I'm going to discuss the flow of blood in the right side of the heart. Why can I do that? Because the blood in the left side of the heart is completely separated from the blood on the right side of the heart. It's one organ, but it is divided into the left side and the right side. And the blood in the left side of the heart, which is oxygenated blood, is completely separated from the blood on the right side of the heart. And this is a very big advantage. And the muscle that separates the oxygenated from the deoxygenated blood from the left and the right side of the heart is this muscle, this thick muscle. Who remembers the name of this muscle?
Septum.
Turn
Excellent.
second.
It's the septum. The septum is the thick muscle that divides the heart in half, divides it into the left side and the right side. And this is a very important muscle because it prevents the mixing of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. Some people are born with a perforation in the septum. They have a hole here in the septum. Now, these people, they have heart problems because the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood gets mixed together, and they have to go and do surgery to close this hole so that the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood does not mix. So again, going back to my question of flow of blood inside the heart. How will I answer this question? I will divide it into 2 parts. This question is usually out of 4 marks. 2 marks for the flow of blood on the left side and 2 marks for the flow of the blood on the right side. So I will divide my answer into 2 parts. Left side of the heart, how does the blood flow here? And the right side of the heart, how does the blood flow here? Now, I'll give you a very important tip. What is the blood that travels in the left side of the heart? Oxygenated or deoxygenated?
Oxygenated.
Oxygenated. So I can start answering the question with using the word oxygenated. So if I will discuss the left side of the heart, I will start with the word oxygenated blood and go on from there. Oxygenated blood will come from the lungs into the pulmonary vein, into the left atrium, through the mitral valve, into the left ventricle, through the aortic valve, into the aorta, to the whole body. And then I can move on to discuss the flow of blood in the right side of the heart. In the right side of the heart, the blood is oxygenated or deoxygenated?
Deoxygenated.
Very good. So I will start discussing the flow of blood in the right side of the heart with the word deoxygenate. Deoxygenated blood will come from the body. From the upper body, it will enter through the superior vena cava. From the lower body, it will enter through the inferior vena cava. Both of them will pour this deoxygenated blood into the right atrium. And then it will pump, the heart will pump, the right atrium will contract. This deoxygenated blood will go through the open tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. The right ventricle will contract. This deoxygenated blood will enter through the pulmonary. Where's the pulmonary artery? The pulmonary artery to go to the lungs. This is the easiest way to remember this objective because this is a clear objective in your notes. Let me show you how you will study it and how you will write it. Okay. Yes. So these are your year 10 notes, transport in animals here. here. Flow of blood through the heart. How will you study this part? You will start by discussing the flow of blood from the right side of the heart. Right side of the heart, you will start with the word deoxygenated. When you discuss the flow of blood from the left side of the heart, you will start with which word? Oxygenated, and move on with the flow of the blood inside the heart. And always put the picture in mind so that you don't forget the flow of blood. Any questions concerning the internal anatomy and the flow of blood inside the heart? Do I have any questions? I'm asking.
No.
Okay. Now let's go back to the core syllabus. The heart is made up of a particular muscle that is only found in the heart, known as the cardiac muscle. Cardiac in biology means heart, and also the word coronary in biology means heart. Now this cardiac muscle, it looks like this. You need to be familiar with the appearance of the cardiac muscle, okay, because they can get you different pictures in paper 2, and they can ask you what this muscle or where this muscle is located. The cardiac muscle is a branching muscle, okay, that has many striations. These striations, these are protein fibers that help the cardiac muscle in contraction. This is all what you need to know about the cardiac muscle, that the cardiac muscle is a branching muscle, and it has lots of protein striations that help this muscle to contract. Of course, the cardiac muscle is one of the strongest muscles in the body, and the cardiac muscle is contracting from the day you are born until the day you die, before you are even born. This is the first organ that is made when you are a fetus inside your mother's womb, and it pumps from the moment I'm not going to even tell you from the moment you're born. Before you're born, the cardiac muscle is pumping the whole time. This cardiac muscle is an involuntary muscle. In other words, you cannot control it. If I tell you, stop your heart from beating, can you control that? Can you stop your heart beating? Yes or no?
No.
No. Muscles that you cannot control are involuntary muscles. So what you need to know about the cardiac muscle, it's a branching muscle with striations. These striations are protein fibers that help it contract, and it is found only in the heart, and it is a muscle that you cannot control. It is an involuntary muscle. Now, internal heart anatomy, we finished this in detail, and we talked about the flow of blood inside the heart, and I told you how to memorize this part. The easiest way to memorize this part is to study the left side alone and the right side alone, and know that they are separated by a thick muscle known as the septum, and the base of the heart here is called the apex, and this apex is always directed to the left side of the heart. Okay, now these are moving pictures showing you the different valves. They concentrate on valves in the supplement syllabus. The valve below the pulmonary artery is known as the pulmonary valve, and the valve below the aorta is known as the aortic valve. The valve on the left side of the heart is known as the bicuspid or the mitral valve, and the valve on the right side of the heart is known as the tricuspid valve. These valves are divided into two types: atrioventricular valves, which are the valves that are found between the atria and the ventricles, which include the bicuspid and tricuspid, and the semi-lunar valves. These are the valves that are found below the aorta and the pulmonary artery, the aortic valve and the pulmonary valve. Again, the valves. Now, sometimes they ask you, what is the function of the septum? I will give you one function now, and then I'll give you another function later. Can you give me one function of the septum, this thick muscle? Why is this thick muscle very important?
Oxygenated blood.
Prevent the oxygenated blood with mixing with the deoxygenated blood.
Correct. Okay, this is one function, and then we will mention another function in a minute. Okay, just look at the pictures. This is the flow of blood. And for your information, both atria contract at the same time and both ventricles contract at the same time. And the aorta, it is the largest blood vessel in your body. This is the aorta. The aorta carries oxygenated blood from the left ventricle to the whole body. So the aorta divides to give you so many branches, and every branch reaches one organ. Again, another picture showing you the valves. We will discuss the valves in a minute. Let's discuss it now. Now the valves. Why are they important? This is something that we took in the core. And how do they work? This is something that we will take in the supplement. Now, first, why are they important? What is the function of the valves?
They prevent the backflow of blood.
Yes, the valves, any valve in any part of the body has the same function. It prevents the backflow of blood. It prevents the blood going in the opposite direction. It makes sure that the blood is moving in the right direction. Now let's understand this together, especially the newcomers. Let's imagine the blood is here in the left atrium. And the left atrium will contract. Contract means it will squeeze. When the mitral valve is open, the blood is going to move from the left atrium into the left ventricle because this is the only open door. Now let's imagine the blood, the oxygenated blood, is in the left ventricle. Okay? I have blood here in the left ventricle. And the left ventricle is contracting. It is squeezing, as you can see. You have two valves. You have the mitral valve here on the left side of the heart, and you have another valve below the aorta, which is this one, the aortic valve. Aortic valve. Now, what is the correct direction of blood flow? When the blood is in the left ventricle, it is supposed to go where? Back to the left atria or into the aorta?
Into the aorta.
Into the aorta. So when the left ventricle contracts, pay attention with me, when the left ventricle contracts, which valve is open and which valve is closed? Which valve
the aortic
is closed?
valve opens. The aortic
Yes.
valve opens and the bicuspid valve
will close. Exactly. So when the left ventricle contracts, which valve will close? The mitral valve. Why? Because if the mitral valve was open, the blood in the left ventricle will go back to the atria. And this is not what we want. We have the blood here. We want the blood to enter the aorta. So when the left ventricle contracts, it's going to enter into the aorta. Why? Because the aortic valve is open. This is the only open door. And the mitral valve is closed. That is why the valves will make sure that the blood is going in the correct direction, that the blood will not go backwards to the left atrium. This is the function of the valve. Now, the second point that you need to know for the supplement is how do the valves work? These valves, they open and they close. When do they open? Pay attention to this sentence. They open when there is high pressure behind the valve. Behind the valve. Now pay attention to the aortic valve. You all agree that when the left ventricle contracts, this oxygenated blood will enter the aorta. Now, why did the aortic valve open? Because when the left ventricle contracted, this will increase the pressure in the left ventricle. In other words, we will increase the pressure behind the aortic valve, and this is going to cause the aortic valve to open. Just like a revolving door. You know the revolving doors? When you are standing here and you push the door, you are applying pressure behind the door. So when you apply pressure behind the valve will open. Do you understand that? Let me show you a picture that will hopefully clarify how do the valves open and close, because this is important. Now let's look here. This is also a valve in a vein. Again, semilunar valves, just like the valves below the aorta and the valve below the pulmonary artery. Look here, when the vein contracts, or when the muscles around the vein contract, see the vein is contracting, it is moving inwards. So the pressure inside the vein, what do you think, increases or decreases?
Increases.
The pressure increases during contraction or decreases? I want an answer.
Increases.
When increases, so the pressure here is increasing. This increase in pressure, look at the valve, will make the valve open. So this is how the valves work. Valves, they open when the pressure behind the valve increase. Just like this vein. When the muscles contract around the vein and the vein contracts, the pressure inside the vein will increase. This pressure is going to increase, pushing the valves open. The valve is like a revolving door that will be pushed open. Now, I want you to pay attention. The blood, if it tries to move in the opposite direction, what happens to the valve? Will the valve allow it to move in the opposite direction?
No.
No.
No, it doesn't. So when do the valves close? Valves close when the pressure in front of the valve increases. So the pressure here. When the pressure in front of the valve increase, the valve will create a pocket and will prevent the backflow of blood. So valves, when you are asked how do the valves work, their function, we know their function. They prevent the backflow of blood. They make sure that the blood moves in the correct direction. Okay. How do they do that? When the pressure behind the valve increases, the valve will open. When the pressure in front of the valve increases, the valve will close. Let's go back to our heart. Here. I have blood here in the left ventricle. I want to understand why, when the left ventricle contracts, the mitral valve will close. Who will tell me?
Prevent the blood from going back to the left atrium.
Correct. Now, I want to know how the procedure took place. When the left ventricle contracts, the pressure in the ventricle will increase, yes? Do you all agree with me?
Yes.
Yes. When the pressure inside the ventricle increases, this means that there will be more pressure in front of the valve or behind the valve.
In
Behind.
front of the valve.
I'm talking about the mitral valve. The pressure will
Front of the-
increase in front of it. That is why the mitral valve will close. Now let's look at the aortic valve. The aortic valve, on the other hand, will open. Why? Because when the left ventricle contracts and pressure in the left ventricle increases, this pressure is behind the aortic valve. That's why the aortic valve will open. So when the blood is in the left ventricle and the left ventricle contracts, I have two valves. One will open and one will close. The mitral valve will close to prevent the backflow of blood. Why does the mitral valve close? Because the pressure here increased in front of the mitral valve. The left ventricle is in front of the mitral valve. And the aortic valve will open. Why? So that the blood enters the aorta. But why did the aortic valve open? Because the pressure behind the aortic valve will increase, pushing the aortic valve open. Do you understand this? I'll explain it one last time and then I will summarize it and then I'll let you go. Let's look at the blood in the other side of the heart, in the right side of the heart. Here, the blood is in the right ventricle. The right ventricle will contract. Contraction in the ventricles will increase the pressure inside the ventricle. Now, when the right ventricle contracts, which valve will open and which valve will close?
The tricuspid will close and the
Correct.
pulmonary what is it called? Pulmonary
Valve, yes, below the pulmonary artery will
open.
correct. So the tricuspid valve will close to prevent the backflow of blood, and the pulmonary valve will open. Good. Now, why will the tricuspid valve close? Why?
Because there's pressure in front of it.
Increases.
Excellent. Because there's an increase in pressure in the right ventricle, which is in front of the tricuspid valve. So the pressure in front of it will increase. That's it. I'm explaining because I don't want you to memorize a sentence without understanding it. Now tell me, why will the pulmonary valve open?
The pressure behind it will increase.
Exactly. The pressure behind it will increase. Very nice. Now, the last thing, and I will promise I'll let you go. We have, and I think I mentioned it 10 times, we have two sets of valves. One set between the atria and the ventricles known as the atrioventricular valve, and another set below the arteries known as the semi-lunar valves, divided into the aortic valve and the pulmonary valve. Okay. When do they open? They open in opposite directions. Now, I want to just show you here the bicuspid and the tricuspid valve, so you don't memorize words without understanding them. The mitral is the bicuspid valve because it is made up of two flaps, as you can see, flap 1 and flap 2. But this is too advanced for you, so... And this is the tricuspid valve, as you can see, because the tricuspid valve is made up of three valves, 1, 2, and 3. So that you know, and this is called a semi-lunar valve or a pocket valve. It's found below the aorta, and it is found below the pulmonary artery, and it is found in the veins. We will study the valves in the veins. Now, I'm explaining all this because this is a supplement objective, and this was a question in one of the years asking you about the valves and how do they open in opposite directions. Look at this. This was the answer from the mark scheme. Okay? Now, what happens when the atria contract and when the ventricles contract and when the whole heart contracts? When the atria contract, now the question, these were empty. You were supposed to fill those, okay? When the atria contract, what happens to the atrioventricular valves? Do they open or they close?
They open.
They open. Now, I want to make sure that you understand the question. This is the heart again, divided into 4 chambers. I have atria up here and ventricles down here. The atria contract together and the ventricles contract together. When the atria contract, there is high pressure in the atria, and this will cause the atrioventricular valves to open so that the blood moves from the atria to the ventricles. Do you understand this?
Yes.
Good. Now, the opposing set of valves will close. When the atrioventricular valves open, what will happen to the semi-lunar valves that are found below the aorta and the pulmonary artery? They will
Open
close.
because there's pressure behind the aortic valve.
Now, when the ventricles contract, again, draw always the picture of the heart in your head, and the ventricles are contraction. So I have high pressure in the ventricles. High pressure in the ventricles will cause which valves to open? The atrioventricular or the semi-lunar valves?
Semi-lunar.
The semi-lunar valves will open. Why? In case they ask you in another question, because again, going back to my picture, this is the heart divided into 4 chambers. These are my ventricles. I have the aorta here and the pulmonary artery here. And this is the aortic valve, and this is the pulmonary valve. And I have the atrioventricular valve here. When the ventricles contract, this means that I have high pressure in the ventricles. And we said that the valve will open when there is pressure behind it. This is the aortic valve. The aortic valve then will open. Why? Because there is high pressure in the ventricles, and the ventricles are behind the aortic valve, causing the aortic valve to open. And the aortic valve does not open alone. Both semilunar valves open together. So when the ventricles contract, whether the left ventricle or the right ventricle, this is going to cause the semilunar valves to open or close. When the ventricles contract,
It will open.
open. Very good. And the opposing valves, the atrioventricular valves, they will open or close.
Close.
Like the mitral valve, they will close. Why? Because there is increase in pressure in front of the valve, in front. That will make it close. So going back to this question, because this question is important. Going back to this question, when the ventricles contract, any contraction means there is high pressure in the ventricles. Ventricles will contract, atrioventricular valves will close to prevent the backflow of blood, and the semilunar valves will open. Now, when both the atria and the ventricles relax, in other words, the heart is relaxing because there is a cardiac cycle that you will study next year, and there is a point or a part where the heart relaxes a little bit before it pumps again. When the heart relaxes, the atrioventricular valves open and the semilunar valves are closed, because when the heart is relaxing, the heart is filling up with blood. So the pressure increases in the atria that will cause the atrioventricular valves to open. Okay? I hope this question is clear, because this is really important and this is new, this is supplement material. So let's look at this NB. Valves open when there is high pressure behind the valve, and valves close when there is high pressure in front of the valve. And these valves are antagonistic. When one set of valves contract, the other set relaxes to ensure one-way blood flow. This should be understood, and this should be understood. Atrioventricular valves open due to high pressure in the atria. Semilunar valves open due to high pressure in the ventricles. Who does not understand this slide? Who has any questions? You're all silent. This means that you all understand. I'm very happy. Okay, I'm going to revise what we took today and promise I'll let you go. Today, we took the anatomy and the internal flow of blood and the function of the valves and how do they work. When I come to study the anatomy, I will have to draw my heart and divide it into 4 chambers. And before I start any labeling, I have to identify the left side and the right side. Okay? Now, this is my nice heart here. And this is the left side, and this is the right side. And the left and the right sides, by the way, they are confusing. So I will use the crisscross method. If this is my right hand, then this will be the left side of the heart. And if this is my left hand here, my left hand, then I'm going to crisscross the directions, and this will be the right side of the heart. I want you to memorize that in the left side of the heart, I have oxygenated blood. And on the right side of the heart, I have oxygenated or deoxygenated. Wake up with me.
Deoxygenated.
Deoxygenated. Above the heart, I'm going to write the word lungs.
Doctor.
Below the heart, I will write the word what?
Body.
Body. Very good. Okay, so that I memorize the journey. I have lungs up here and body down there. And then I'm going to study the journey of the air. The air will be taken in by the nose. If you have a cold, it will be taken in through your mouth. It will go to the lungs. The lungs will oxygenate the red blood cells, and the red blood cells will be filled with oxyhemoglobin. We'll take this in respiration. This oxygenated blood will enter the left side of the heart through the, you tell me, through the what?
Pulmonary vein.
Pulmonary vein. It's called pulmonary vein because it came from the lungs, and it's a vein, it's going towards the heart. I have 2 pulmonary veins, if you notice, one here and one here, because one vein or each vein will take or receive the oxygenated blood from each lung. I have 2 lungs. This is not my problem now. So this oxygenated blood will enter through the pulmonary vein into where? What's the first chamber it
The left
meets?
atrium.
Left atrium. And then the atria, both atria contract together, by the way. The left atria will contract, increasing the pressure inside the atria. When the pressure inside the atria increases, this will open which valve?
The mitral valve.
Mitral valve.
Excellent. The mitral valve. Okay, and the valves open together, the atrioventricular valves, they open together. So you'll find that the mitral valve will open and the tricuspid valve will open, even though the blood is on the left side. But the atrioventricular valves, they open together and they close together. So let's go back to the flow of blood. I have high pressure here in the atria due to contraction of the left atrium, and this high pressure behind the mitral valve will open the mitral valve. The blood will enter into the left ventricle. Now, the left ventricle or both ventricles contract at the same time, increasing the pressure inside the ventricles. When the pressure inside the ventricles increase, this is going to open the what? Which valve?
Aortic valve.
Aortic valve.
Excellent, the aortic valve, because the pressure here is behind the valve. And close which valve?
The mitral valve.
Yes, correct, to prevent the backflow of blood. And why did the mitral valve close? Because the pressure here increases in front of the valve, not behind the valve. The aortic valve will open, the blood will enter the aorta into the whole body. The body takes the oxygen. The body cells will take this oxygen, use it in respiration, give out deoxygenated blood that is high in CO2. And then this deoxygenated blood will go back to the right side of the heart through the what?
Vena cava.
Very good. I have a superior and an inferior, but the inferior is not in the picture here. Superior from the upper parts of the body, inferior from the lower parts of the body. This deoxygenated blood will enter into the right atrium. The atria will contract, increasing the pressure in the right atrium, and this is going to force the tricuspid valve to open. So the blood will move through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. Now the ventricles will contract, increasing the pressure inside the right ventricle. When the pressure inside the right ventricle increases, this will open which valve to open?
Pulmonary valve.
The pulmonary valve. Very good. The pulmonary valve will open, the blood will enter the pulmonary artery. It's called pulmonary artery because where is it going? To the
Lungs.
lungs. And it's called the artery because it's moving away from the heart. I'm done. I'm finished. Okay? The valves. I have 2 sets of valves. Again, I'll say it for the last time. I have 2 sets of valves. I have atrioventricular valves. From the name, these are valves found between the atria and ventricles. And they are of 2 types. What are they? The one on the left side of the heart, what is it called?
Mitral.
Yes, correct. Mitral or the bicuspid. And the ones on the right side of the heart, what is it called? It has one name.
Tricuspid.
Tricuspid. Thank you. And then I have another set of valves in the heart known as the semilunar. I think those names are new to you. And they are also of 2 types. One below the aorta, known as the
Aortic valve.
correct.
Valve.
Thank you so much. And one below the pulmonary artery, known as the
Pulmonary valve.
pulmonary valve. They're called semilunar valves because they are described as being pocket valves, and these are the valves that are also found in the veins. We will study arteries and veins and capillaries tomorrow. You will know that arteries do not have valves, but the aorta and the pulmonary artery are the only 2 arteries in the whole body that have valves, and they have valves at their base only. No any valves within the artery. Okay? And we took the cardiac muscle. Now, enough for today, or you want something else?
Enough.
Okay, enough. This lesson is long, by the way. Most probably it will take 2 weeks. Tomorrow, we will solve together the second half of paper 2, or we will solve paper 4. I'll think and tell you. Okay. Any questions before I go?
And Miss, do you mean paper 2 for this lesson or for plants?
Oh, for plants. No, we did not finish this lesson. We only solve when we finish.
Okay.
Okay? So please solve paper 2 today, please. We solved 30 pages in class and we solved them in half an hour. They don't take time because I want to start solving paper 4 tomorrow because we still have paper 6. Okay? And we only have 2 months. I'm trying my best to finish the syllabus in 2 months. I'll try my best. So let's work together so that we finish, and we want to revise the whole syllabus, and we want to solve past papers because we want to score very good grades on the Cambridge exam. So let's work together, please. So please finish paper 2 today. If you have any question, take a picture of the question and send it to me and I will help you. Okay? Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.